I would like to welcome this morning's keynote speaker, Sue Kristjansson. Do you want to come on up, Sue? Sue is the president and CEO of the Berkshire Gas Company. Berkshire Gas Company is a 170-year-old natural gas utility serving about 40,000 customers in Western Massachusetts. Berkshire Gas is a member of the Avangrid family of companies. Sue has over 20 years experience in the industry, including with the Southern California Gas in Los Angeles and Oak Ridge Utility District in Tennessee. Sue, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. This is cute. It's like we're at a little cafe.
Yeah, very
Casual. Where's the wine?
well. That's later. Yeah, okay, we'll do that later. So thank you for being here. And as we were talking this morning, we've done a series of these now. We've spoken with executives from National Fuel, National Grid, and Con Edison, and trying to balance. We've got combination utilities, gas-only utilities, and your company's kind of unique that you're part of a larger company that has gas and electric utilities, but you are gas only. So really looking forward to this conversation with you today and getting your perspective on where you see the industry going. So why don't we start maybe with a question about where you're situated in the state? Because I think when people think about Massachusetts, they often think about Boston and the suburbs, and that's really obviously a population center, so it gets a lot of attention. But you serve a very different, part of the state. So can you tell us a little bit about Berkshire Gas and, how it is to operate in a state like that where you're kind of way far away from Boston?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. When I tell people that I'm in the Northeast in Massachusetts, they're like, oh my gosh, I love Boston. Like, yeah, I've been twice. So I don't know what you're talking about. But we're far in the western portion of Massachusetts, right on the border of New York. And we have two non-contiguous service territories. We have a West Division and Eastern Division, and then a big divide between the two. 3 counties that we serve: Berkshire County, Franklin County, and Hampshire County. Our Eastern Division is in a self-imposed moratorium right now because we ran out of capacity and we just can't increase anymore. It's the incremental creep that's kind of got to us. This was several years ago. We had hoped that we would get some sort of infrastructure and some sort of pipelines. I think there's been efforts over the past maybe 10 years, you're probably very familiar with it, that failed miserably for any number of reasons. But there we stand. We are pretty finite in what we can do there. Like you said earlier, we have on any given day around 40,000 customers, particularly in the Western Division predominantly, because we, of course, don't have that many in Eastern Division. So operating in Massachusetts as kind of a tucked away, smaller utility on the western side of the state, it has its advantages, don't get me wrong, but it's a little bit challenging when we have regulations or legislation or things like that are cropping up that we're often forgotten. So, you got to take the good with the bad. But, we work a lot with the other LDCs, and I think we play a vital role. We have a good population out there that needs us and wants us, and, go gas.
So you talking about Massachusetts, like other states in the Northeast, has very ambitious clean energy goals and carbon reduction targets. Can you share how Avangrid, maybe as a whole, and then also Berkshire Gas, is working with the state or alongside the state to implement the clean energy plan and support the state's achievements?
Yes, and I would say that Massachusetts at this point in time has the most aggressive climate goals in the country, with, if you're not familiar with it or not from Massachusetts, DPU 2080, which was originally supposed to be a future of gas docket to figure out what the LDCs, the gas LDCs in Massachusetts were going to do to meet the climate goals that were passed by the legislation. And then we had an election, and a new administration came in, and a new chair came in for the DPU, and it went to sleep for quite a while. And we waited for some sort of response. When it came out, it was no longer the future of gas, it was beyond gas. That was a quote from the regulatory team in Massachusetts. which took everything that all of the preparation we had done and the planning and the roadmap that we had put together for how we were going to contribute to these goals, which is ultimately what we want to do. We're not looking to say, hell no, we won't go. That is not at all what we want to do. That took all of that away. For instance, there's no RNG or hydrogen allowed in these. So when you say aggressive, I just wanted to put a pin in that for sure. Avangrid, we are unique. You know, I'm natural gas only. I'm a small utility, but Avangrid is a very large company under a very much larger European company that is extremely invested in renewable energy. And they do an awful lot in Massachusetts, as a matter of fact. And I brought notes. I usually don't, but there's numbers involved here, and I would never have been able to remember them. So in Massachusetts, we have under Avangrid renewable side, offshore wind, Vineyard Wind 1, which is 806 megawatts. That's under construction. We have, oh, I thought it was mine because my purse is right there. I thought, oh no, that was me. We have New England Wind 1, which is estimated to be 791 megawatts. That's been awarded. And then onshore, we have Hoosac Wind, which is right in our neck of the woods, 29 megawatts, and that's in Berkshire and Franklin counties. The U.S. overall, they're extremely involved and I would say toggling for first or second place in renewables. 9 gigawatts installed wind and solar capacity, 19 gigawatts wind onshore solar, and 6 gigawatts offshore pipeline. So when we talk about Avangrid, they're very, very involved, and they are helping us in Massachusetts to achieve those goals. So it's really a benefit for us to be a part of that organization. What is Berkshire doing for this? Keeping its head above water at this point. As I think a lot of people are, we're working very hard to set new plans in place for adhering to DPU 2080 plus some regulatory things. But I find it comforting. You know, the vendors all came up and they introduced themselves, and several of them talked about the emissions and the carbon. So this is, you know, like it takes a village. So I feel like we're among good company working with other LDCs and working with our vendors, our innovators, and our technology experts in moving forward.
Thank you. And I was going to go there sort of like about innovation and technology as a next question, because I think core to our business, our whole industry is always safe, reliable, affordable service. And with very ambitious clean energy goals, and the move to more intermittent resources like wind and solar playing a bigger role, we've got regional ISOs warning us about, you know, risks towards reliability, like the, you know, the emphasis on electrification is, you know, what does that mean for your business? What does that mean for the electric grid? Now, I know that's not your concern as a gas-only utility, but the push to electrification. To do these things, it's going to require innovation and technology. So could you talk a little bit about what role you see emerging technologies playing in the gas industry? And if you're, you know, embarking on anything, I know you mentioned RNG's out, but, you know, is there another run at that with the state with RNG and hydrogen, or how is Berkshire Gas thinking about that?
Yeah, so I think I want to pick up on one thing that you said in particular and start there, the electric grid and its needs from a capacity standpoint to absorb not only you know, the stuff that's coming off of our renewables, but if you're looking to transfer all of the natural gas end uses onto that grid, I don't know that there's a grid that's possible to accommodate that. So I think that there's starting to be a little bit of a recognition, and the ISOs coming out with their statements is really, really important and very helpful. The thing that I have found over the past 20 plus years, we are the slowest in the world. I love our industry. Let me just put up front. I don't want to, you know. We are the slowest in the world to commercialize our new technology that we're going to use. And specifically, I'm thinking of, I'm hitting my mic here, gas heat pumps. Where are they? Where are they? They've been out there swirling in the wind for a very long time. That could be very helpful to us at this point in time. I don't know that we're going to have any acceptance of that with, regulatory bodies, because now it is the fuel that they're trying to not have anymore. So I think that that's important. RNG, I will be absolutely looking to expand some RNG options at Berkshire Gas. Hydrogen, I'm a little torn. I know a lot of people say that's the absolute future, but with the heat content being so low, it's going to be challenging. And I think it's going to be best suited for commercial and industrial customers, large commercial and industrial customers on site doing that. But the cost is so astronomical. And how do we pay for that, right?
Yeah.
The other thing, I think you asked about what we're doing within the state, how we're helping the state. So I serve on the Massachusetts Energy Transition Board. It's brand spanking new, so that's why I can't quite get the words out as quickly as possible. We've had one meeting, but that's focusing on 3 areas of this issue that are going to be key. The financing is one, peak shaving is another, and then I've totally forgotten the other one. So it's okay. I feel like
Come to us.
Romney or somebody in a debate years ago did this on stage, and
Oh, no, that was
he got some flack.
Perry.
Oh, it was Perry.
It's
Romney
like
tried to help him.
The
Yeah.
5
Yeah.
agencies.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah. Well, I'm not serving on that third one, so it's all okay. But yeah, so I mean, there's that. And then with the DPU 2080, there's a requirement for us to look at geothermal or look at non-pipes alternatives when we go to do some pipe replacement for leak-prone pipe. We're going to explore. We've got an opportunity in our Eastern Division. We've got this moratorium going on. Maybe that's a perfect place for it, but there's some challenges with that too. Cost, obviously, the geology of the area. So it's going to be a struggle, but not something that we're not willing to do.
I think the third one is the closing of the Everett Marine.
That's it. Yes. Thank you.
Which the utilities all work
Thank you, Mick.
collectively. Yeah, I came. We're opposed to. And I don't know if you want to touch on that at all, if it has any implications to your system. I know some utilities it's pretty critical, but I don't know if you want to touch on that.
I think it's critical to everybody's system in some way, shape, or form, whether you're taking directly from it or not. So I have our guru of gas supply who has dealt with this for a long time. He's at Avangrid. Most of you probably know him, John Rudiak. He is sitting on that committee and will be our representative. But yeah, I think there's a recognition too. We have a 6-year contract we just entered into to keep that going for 6 years.
So people know, I'm sorry, because not everybody's from Massachusetts.
Okay.
It's an LNG facility.
Yes, yeah. So it supplements significantly just because of our capacity issues across the state. And they're looking to close that just as one of the spokes to the wheel, or the arrows in their quiver to draw down on fossil fuel, so to speak. So, sorry? Oh, I thought someone said something. I thought they were correcting me. So I think, I can't imagine that people aren't going to be opposed to that when it comes to a really big storm or something where the lights go out.
Yeah. So given all the things you're talking about, you mentioned before, DPU 2080 and Beyond Gas. When you're sitting in your boardroom, what do you think the time horizon is for natural gas? Is there one?
So I know that the schedule is 2050 for us to be completely off of natural gas. There's been a lot of talk over the years about it being a bridge fuel. That bridge can be as long as that bridge needs to be. What we need to make sure of is that we don't do this in such a way that we are really impeding the advancements in our energy systems versus making it better for a very specific mindset. That there has to be pragmatism in this, but I think I can't tell you when that end will be. I can just say it's not in my time or probably in my next generation's time.
Good.
It's bold. That's bold.
It's
a bold statement that I just said on audio.
Given the state's significant focus on the Beyond Gas and electrification, what's the regulatory environment like for you at Berkshire Gas? is there still an appetite from regulators to support the continued need for investment so that we can continue to provide safe, reliable, affordable service? How are you navigating that?
So I think there's regulatory and then there's legislative. So legislative is not amenable to keeping us funded on our upgrades. There was a GSEP working group. It was a public thing. GSEP is our gas system enhancement program that is DIMP, basically. And there was a very, very firm senator who wants to completely disallow us having any recovery for that work, or to draw that down significantly over the next couple of years. Berkshire's in pretty good position. We don't have as much pipe, so we look like we're going to be done probably about 2030, no later than that. And then you have the regulatory side of it, that they will and they continue to impose new regulations that, from a safety perspective, are absolutely needed and fantastic, but the cost associated with all of those piled on to the rest of the costs, I don't know at what point we get to that balance where we can't charge our customers this amount anymore. You know, we're supposed to be the affordable. Right. Isn't that in one of our 3 pillars? We're being forced out of affordability in that sense.
Absolutely. So earlier on, you mentioned that one division, you have a forced moratorium because you don't have capacity, but maybe it just on the Western division side, do you have customers still connecting to your system where you can? And maybe have you implemented any non-pipes alternatives, or is the state looking for Berkshire to do any of those types of programs in lieu of connecting customers or getting customers off?
Yeah, there's a few things. So we do have demand. It's not significant. And, you know, that capacity runs through the Western division too, the capacity challenges that we have. So when that's going to hit its peak, I don't know. But it will at some point. We do have a fairly steady growth curve. Non-pipes alternatives, yeah, that's mandated now. So every single GSEP project that we undertake, we identify pipes that need to be remediated and moved over to different material. We have to assess that project for viability for a non-pipes alternative, either an electrification, a geothermal, whatever that is. So out of that, it's very likely that we're going to end up with projects. We're looking for them anyway, just because it's pragmatic to do so. I haven't found any yet. I have my engineering team on that, and we haven't found any yet, but definitely that Eastern Division is probably where we're going to hit first. And a little tidbit about that Eastern Division, just to add a little context. When that moratorium came up, there were a lot of elected officials and regulatory and policymakers that were so happy that we did that because they just knew that everyone was going to go all electric. They just knew it. It was going to solve the problem. Nobody went all electric. They all went propane. So kind of a little bit of a backfire, like it wasn't intended to go that way, but they're now commenting on the fact that the choice that the customer is making is not what they want them to make. Surprise, surprise. Quelle surprise, I'm shocked.
You know, you've mentioned a couple times cost, both for implementing safety regulations, but also as part of the clean energy transition. Has Avangrid or Berkshire Gas done any cost estimates, you know, for these kind of in the future, to implement these programs? What does that look like on the customer's bill? Do you have a sense?
Oh boy, no. Yes and no. There are some estimates floating around. I mean, if you look at the general idea of electrifying a standard-sized home, it's anywhere between, at this point, $15,000 and $25,000 to do that. So that's a customer issue. Then, not to mention, what is the increase in their electric bill if they're all electric? So I think we're all familiar with that argument. A non-pipes alternative project in our territory is going to be in the tens of millions. So what that's going to be for 40,000 customers, I guess it would be across Massachusetts in general, but that means, you know, everyone's bill is going to rise up. I don't like to think about the cost so much, really, because I know that sounds silly, and I understand that that's probably one of the biggest issues. But how do you combat that when the arguments against that from those imposing the policy and the legislation and the regulatory that doesn't bother them because it's all going to come from somewhere. It's an if you build it, they will come kind of mentality.
Except they didn't, as you said.
Correct.
They went propane.
We have a perfect little microcosm of an example there for that. I'll just say it's going to cost a lot. I'm sure you guys have done way more analysis in your own areas to see what the cost would be to your individual customers. We have for some things. You talked about drawing down and going to electric. Mass Save no longer allows rebates for residential customers for high efficiency gas equipment. So that growth that we talked about a minute ago could subside if customers go to do that and decide that they've got this astronomical incentive for heat pumps when they can't replace this over here. So it's all going to come out in the wash. Our finance department is on that, doing that. We talk about it from time to time. The one that I'm a little bit worried about is the newest safety regulation that came through recently. For those of you in Massachusetts, you're familiar with it. With Merrimack Valley, the reports were completed, the postmortems, and we had discussions about it. There was a draft that came out last year, I think early last year, and all of the LDCs had an opportunity to chime in on where they saw the problems arising out of this or how they would make it better. And then we heard nothing, of course, the election and the new administration. And then again, it just dropped at the end of September with an October 11th implementation date. So we had 2 weeks to implement all of these things. The cost of some of this is going to be off the charts. Just a very tiny part of it. One of the elements is pressure regulation on the district regulators. That's going to be almost $20 million for us, I think. And that's not counting labor. That's just the specific on the part. So I don't even know how to deal with the cost part of it. Keep my head in the sand.
So you said something sort of interesting a couple minutes ago, at least to me, on the cost question, that what's the point, because elected officials and regulars don't seem to hear that. Curious, are you hearing it from customers? Do you think customers are aware that this is happening? And I guess you have to wait and see their response to this, because that's where the rubber meets the road. But curious if, as a president of a gas utility, do you hear from consumers about it?
No. The age-old adage is that any regular consumer of energy, think about their energy 7 minutes a year. That's cumulative when they pay their bill or if it goes out or something.
Right.
We've not notified anybody about all of these things going on. So unless you're inside baseball in this, people don't know. Like my mother would have no idea in her little apartment of what's going on. I don't know how to combat that because I think most companies are not wanting to put something out that it looks like it's being combative or however. So it's a delicate balance to try to move through this. But I did notify our customers about the Mass Save, and we heard nothing. I don't think they read the stuff that there's the challenge after challenge. So I think we're going to run into a point. We're going to get to a point where we start implementing things, and we have to notify them that their bill is going to go up by X amount, and then we're going to hear something, and we're going to be left holding the bag on that. I don't think it's going to go back to a regulatory or a legislative decision where they say, what did you do to us? They're going to say, you're raising our rates.
Well, because it's your logo on the bill. So
big time. Yeah.
Yeah. So
exactly.
You'll be left holding that bag, answering those questions. Why?
Right.
And the ball will probably be pretty far down the road.
Right. So exactly.
I think it's a challenge for the entire industry.
Yeah.
I don't, all of that said, across the industry and across Massachusetts, across the country, thousands of men and women are working in the gas industry. 300 or so are here today with us. As a leader, what do you say to your employees about the future of gas and the future of Berkshire Gas?
We're not going anywhere. What we look like in 50 years is an unknown. I just told you a minute ago, I think that bridge is really, 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 really long, if not infinite. But I think back to, for those of you who are older like me, I think back to Kodak. who, they refuse to evolve. And they're mostly gone now, if not completely gone. Actually, I think they're gone. We need to evolve. And I don't want to, let me just figure out how I'm going to say this. I think that there's a mindset that the gas industry are climate change deniers. We don't believe it. We just want to burn, baby, burn. That's not true. That's not true. I don't think that there's any question that there is some sort of climate change. And even if there wasn't, we should be responsible to look at what we're putting out into our environment, regardless, right? We have to be good stewards of the earth. Having said that, we've been branded as obstructionists. How do we evolve now to do that? And it's to diversify our businesses, and it's to train our employees on what those new technologies are. For those who are up closer, I see 3 tranches of employee base. The older employees that are within 10 years of retiring, they're going to see nothing change, nothing. You can't even get a geothermal project in 10 years. So that's going to be moot. The middle group are going to help with the transition. So they're going to ride both sides of it, right? They're going to see some of this new technology coming in that's going to augment what we're doing, what we're putting in the pipes. And then the new ones coming in are going to get the best of both worlds in really good training. So there's no reason for people to not want to be in this industry. And I think that we should be we're a very proud industry. We love our product. We love our service. We're fantastic at it. We should embrace that and say, that's great. We can be really great at these other things too, to some degree, to help this along. I don't think that anyone in this room thinks that Berkshire Gas or Massachusetts are going to change the trajectory of climate change. That we're just such beyond a blip. We're a flea on a blip, an amoeba on a flea on a blip. When you've got China and India and all of these other countries that are doing nothing. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do some of the things that we need to do. It's not an all or nothing proposition. So I think when I talk to my employees about this, you're in a fantastic industry. We are a family. We really are. It's really weird because I've worked in other industries in my many, many years. And, people go home at the end of the day and it's out of sight, out of mind. This is very an entrenched industry everywhere I've worked, which I love. So let's just look at that on how we change this family up and bring it into 2025, 2050, 2100.
Thank you. When you think about the future of energy policy in Massachusetts and where the energy industry is going, and you've talked about this a little bit, what keeps you up at night as an executive running a gas utility?
The speed with which this is going. I just feel sometimes, like I said, I referenced a movie earlier, if you build it, they will come. You can't just say it's going to be and it's going to be. There are so many things that have to happen. The training of the employees, the siting of the projects, the cost implications, the economic analysis, the viability of technologies. I'm so surprised that the energy industry overall has chosen to say that natural gas is a detriment. What is better than flora and fauna of hundreds of years trapped in the layers of Earth's surface that produce this beautiful product to heat our homes with and keep our family safe with? And yet there is this approach to get this all done as quickly as possible. I mean, Massachusetts, it's 2050, but 2050 in the eyes of a lot of people is it's done. We're gone. Berkshire Gas building is now, I don't know, a roller rink. I don't know. But it's this image of everything being hunky-dory and beautiful green trees and things. Well, we have them already. It was stunning driving up here. Holy cow. But that really does keep me up at night. And I get very, very passionate about that typically when I talk, because pragmatism has seemed to have left us for some reason. And we need to bring that back into this discussion. But we don't get to the table very often, and we hide. And that if there's something that I would say about our industry that is that I have had issues with over the years at every company I've worked for, we don't want to say anything. Because in California, it was, if you say something about this, then maybe your pipeline doesn't get approved. In Tennessee, I didn't have to. I had legislators coming up to me at events saying, hey, can we float a bill for you? You need anything? Like, it's a totally different world. And then here I am now in Massachusetts where it's beyond gas. But we don't necessarily sit at the table. And when we do have a seat at the table, I think we feel isolated and that we don't want to say what's really on our minds. We need to say what's really on our minds. We get climate change is real. We recognize that 100%. We recognize that we have some level of responsibility just to the environment and to our customers and to ourselves. I'm a customer of Berkshire Gas, right? I have a kid. He's going to have kids. I don't want to leave a bad world. None of us do. But we want to bring the pragmatism back to the table and tell you what we're going to do and how we're going to do this in as expedited a way as possible without jeopardizing our entire energy system. Energy is not a singular focus. It's not electric. It's a beautiful mosaic that kind of shifts based on climate needs at the time. You need all of these pieces of the puzzle. I don't want to use the old, all of the above approach, but you need to, I see it as a moving mosaic picture of, sometimes it's predominantly electric, sometimes it's predominantly gas. It needs to stay in that realm so that we have the security that we have right now.
So I want to pick up a little bit on something you said, like we're not vocal enough, or we don't say what's on our mind in our industry. How are you as an executive trying to make sure that you have a seat at the table, or, what more can we be doing as an industry collectively, and how are you doing that yourself?
Get on boards, get on state boards, get on local boards, get on whatever you can. Talk to those your local politicians. They have so much incredible clout. When I was in Tennessee, I was a public utility that I was running there, and the influence that you have with mayors and council members and townships is incredible. Talk to the customers. If you're permitted to have that kind of communication with your company, I know that that's dicey at every corporation, how you're going to communicate these things, but let them know. Hold town halls. Once people see that you're out there and you're not a lunatic that's got a sign that says, hell no, we won't go, I think we're going to get a heck of a lot more recognition. But this has been going on for a long time. In 2012, I was at a meeting in San Francisco. We had one of the commissioners from the CPUC. They were on a panel and talking about all of this, talking about zero net energy. And a gentleman raised his hand and stood up, and he was an architect, a local architect. And he said, so in 2020, when natural gas is gone, are we going to pull the pipes out of the ground, or are we just going to leave them there? He honestly thought that an architect thought that within 8 years we would be gone. So this discussion has been running rampant for a very, very long time. And we've had snippets of time where we have been involved, and use your industry, your association. I mean, there's associations out there that are trying very hard to combat this, but there's a balancing act with them too when you have the different types of energy as membership. So we can do it. Just find the right people in your organization that are willing to sit down and take the heat, be in that room. And it gets dicey sometimes, I'll tell you. I've been heckled hardcore, but it's worth it. Very worth it.
Thank you. I have one more question from me, and then we'll see if maybe there's a question or two from the audience before we wrap up. But I'd like to end on a positive note, because sometimes these don't feel positive, these conversations. What gives you hope for the future of our industry?
Oh, my employees, my team, 100%. Regardless of all of the stuff that is going on, they come in every single day and they give 110%. And that's important because they're counting on me and my leadership team to work on all of this stuff so that they can do what's right for the customers. That's one major thing. Recently, I told you that we had the first meeting of the energy transition team for the state. There was a different tenor in this meeting. It was, not negative to natural gas. There were people talking about the benefits of natural gas generation and how much cleaner it is than coal and all of that kind of, they talked about decarbonization, but they didn't talk about electrification. So I think there might be a little bit of a shift in the mindset. We need to grab it and run with it. So that gives me great hope too.
Thank you, Sue.
Okay.
I think we have maybe time for one or two questions. Are there any questions from the audience this morning?
Or comments. I love discussions.
Paul, go ahead.
Just to follow up on that energy transition team, it seems like with 2080, there wasn't a lot of emphasis on economic impact.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that'll play into the energy transition discussions? And what are your thoughts on economic impact of the state in terms of jobs, going to other places and things of that nature?
Would you mind if I just restate?
Oh, sure.
People might not have heard Paul. Paul was asking about the economic impacts and potential implications for jobs based on the state's efforts with DPU 2080 and the new task force. So
they're one of the working groups. They're called FOGS, Focus Area Working Group, is on the economic element and how do we fund this. So there will be a fairly robust approach to looking at that. And I think that's going to be very jarring and very eye-opening for a lot of people on that board who haven't recognized what that's going to look like. And they're looking for other ways to fund it. Impact to the state, I think of data centers and AI. They're not going to come here because how can they, right? There's no way with the juxtaposition of the technology that's happening outside of the energy industry that requires energy, very particular energy, for that to comport in Massachusetts. If you're going to get rid of these things and you're going to overburden an electric system too soon, you don't have the bandwidth for that. Or the large manufacturing companies that need gas. We can't host any of those in Western Massachusetts. So that's an economic element for us, right? Where are we getting some good manufacturing jobs in the West? We have a lot of depressed areas there. So I think that financial group will look at that. I think that's another thing that has to be discussed at any one of these tables that we sit down at. It just bring it all guns a-blazing, just the truth of the matter.
Okay. We'll take one more. Go ahead. Yes.
What would a non-pipeline solution look like for gas?
So the question is, what would a non-pipeline solution look like for gas?
Either full electrification, taking everybody off of the gas system. So when we go to do a portion of a line in our GSEP program, we have to do an analysis. Let's say it's 10 customers on that main, can we pull them off of the gas, have them electrify? Are they willing to do that? Is it viable? Can the grid accommodate it? And are we, I was going to say, are we willing to do it? But I guess we don't have a choice if we're willing to do it. The other one would be geothermal loops, which is going to be really expensive, really expensive. There's some legislation, I think, coming out soon that's going to give us a little bit more insight into when we do these non-pipes alternatives, what our latitude is for releasing customers off of our, because we have an obligation to serve. So what does that look like for us when we
and if customers don't want to, how do you even force them?
Right.
I mean, I know other utilities in New York has worked on non-pipes alternatives before and offering customers thousands of dollars, and they're still, no, I'm good.
And I
you still have to serve them.
Yeah, and I will say this: I love the gas industry. Since I moved to the U.S. from Canada, this is the industry I've been in predominantly, and I'm very loyal to it. I love the people. I love the product. I bought a house in Massachusetts. It didn't have gas. It does now, a whole lot of it. But I will tell you, if there was an alternative that had zero implications for the environment and it provided the same comfort level and security for my home and didn't cost any more, I would not be opposed to that. So until that point, I'm going to continue to fight for this product as a major element of our future of energy.
seems like a good place to leave it. Please join me in thanking Sue
Uh-oh,
for
gonna-
being here today.